price go, up and down within like smaller time frames, but definitely up over a longer time frame, right? Like 3-4+ years, is a signal that shows us that we're at least directionally right.
Model is going to tell me when to buy and when to sell. And I mean, do you think people are really kind of missing the point of Bitcoin when they focus on that?
When I talk to Larry and James, it's like you need to understand the underlying structural foundation.
Millennials, probably the most college-educated, smartest generation, the most productive generation in regards to the use of technology. They have all the tools, and the government constantly extracts value away from them so that they're stuck on the hamster wheel. Hey guys, welcome back to another Byte Federal podcast, and I'm joined today by Bram Canstein. How are you, buddy?
Good. Recovering from the Amsterdam conference where we saw each other for the first time in real life, so that's fun.
That was really cool. I was really excited that we bumped into each other, and I was what a cool venue. I was blown away by that. The whole whale platform was pretty intense.
Yeah. It was like whales looking down on the plebs, which was kind of weird.
Yes. It was a little bit weird.
Yeah, but cool
it was
industrial
really
place.
Cool.
Yeah,
it was.
And a bit more intimate than like the other locations. Like I like when it's a bit smaller and you can actually meet more people. But that was fun. And then of course brutal price action.
Yeah, well,
so,
that's we'll talk about that a little bit. But one of the I wanted to find out from you, because you were running all over the place there. We didn't get to talk that much, unfortunately. But what was the most standout thing for you at the event? Like, what did you see, hear? Who did you talk to that really kind of was something that you thought was important?
I think people that run Bitcoin treasury companies shouldn't be saying that Zcash is a hedge against Bitcoin.
I didn't hear that. What was that all about?
Well, that's probably the weirdest thing I heard. Wow. But I think it's kind of tied into this general sentiment, like I told you when we met. I think there was a podcast episode you did with Cedric Youngelman of the Bitcoin Matrix, where I don't know exactly what you said or how you talked about Bitcoin, but I do remember that it just made me realize how big this idea is, right? Like just changing the global technology for money, like having something that kind of like fights back to this whole fiat money predatory system that we are forced to operate in, right? And it is just a really big idea. And this is not a short-term thing, right? Like I really feel that I'm going to pay attention to this for the rest of my life, only because I want to see how it plays out, but also because I know that if I keep working for and saving in fiat money, I'm basically going to lose my purchasing power at an ever accelerating rate, and I think just realizing that Bitcoin is what some people might call a hedge against that, which I don't agree with, because eventually you will figure out that this is probably an entire replacement of at least the foundation of a financial system, or at least the attempt at replacing the foundation of a financial system. It is just a really big thing, right? This is not a trade. This is not an investment. This is not something that's going to make you rich quick. It's an escape from a broken money, and I would say also a broken mind to a degree because of the broken money. So it's a really big thing, and currently, of course, the price goes down. It's a little dip that's less than anything I think we've seen in terms of like bull market dips, or it's like, I don't know, it's in the top 5, or like it's number 5 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like this is part of it. Like nothing goes up in a straight line. People will try to manipulate it, etc. It's a hard subject to understand. Like, why does Bitcoin exist? How is it different than everything that already exists? How is it different from crypto and all these things? So it is just hard to keep your conviction. And I think, the current sentiment um, is fucking weak. like not enough people understand what this is, and there are a lot of people that hold Bitcoin that don't understand what this is. And I think that kind of creates this sentiment of like, well, look at all these guys on podcasts saying it's going to go up and this and that. Yeah, bro, it's going to go up, but not in a month.
Yeah.
Right? It is longer. You have to look longer. And so I think this influences kind of the sentiment a lot, and that combined with just shit posting, trolling and stuff on social media, it's like a cascading effect to people who maybe are paying attention but know even less, right? And they feel extra threatened by red numbers they're seeing.
You just summarized like everything I want to talk to you about today. So that's what happens when you have a great podcaster on your podcast. So let's unpack some of this stuff, because I think that what is missing for me in this cycle, if cycles still exist, is that everybody wants to pay attention to the suits in the room that are swinging big bags, right, of cash, and are doing, making big buys. But those guys don't have the passion. They don't see what you and I see about how this could change the average person's life, provide abundance for them and their family, extend their time frames so that they are confident in building wealth slowly, as opposed to the YOLO trade, right? And
YOLO life.
Yeah, or the YOLO life. Yeah, even a better example. So, and that is like one of the things that got me into Bitcoin, was listening to some of the OGs talk about the spiritual or psychological impacts Bitcoin have on you as an individual, the incentive it provides to change your lifestyle, your view, so that you can make a long-term, slow and steady acquisition of this asset, because you're so confident in its ability to achieve its outcomes. And I think you and I kind of like maybe got in around a time frame where that was the main story, and now the story is all about which company's buying the most Bitcoin, and what's the price target, and which model is going to tell me when to buy and when to sell. And, I mean, do you think people are really kind of missing the point of Bitcoin when they focus on that?
Well, I think this is just a way for people to find Bitcoin nowadays, right? I mean, in 2014, we were also posting when moon memes, right? And like Lambo on the moon memes and stuff like that. And so, although there are many deeper layers to Bitcoin, like number go up is still the prime marketing, I would say, and that is a flaw of the fiat money paradigm that we're living in, right? Like you come for the get rich quick or apparent get rich quick, and you stay for the sovereignty and the freedom and all these things. I think that is still true today. But we're just living in a different time. Like I think yesterday I had what I called like an emergency podcast with James Lavish and Larry Lepard. I said I need to call Uncle Larry and Uncle James to fix the understanding of the bigger thesis, right? And I don't think it is. It's logical to think, or rational to think, that kind of goes to the background, because on the other side, or in the parallel side, right, the fiat money debasement is accelerating, right? Like times are becoming more and more insecure. This whole idea of fourth turning, etc., it's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. Like we're actually seeing that, right? And so I think people are also more and more confused as about what to do, right? So in Europe, we have Christine Lagarde, who proudly promotes the CBDC model because it's working so great in China. And I can imagine that some people are like, oh, yes, please relieve me, big government, relieve me of all these fucking uncertainties I have, and my watermelon is 20 euros. And people are going to go that way, we're going to end up at a point where there are people that choose the slave route, and there are people that choose the freedom route. And only when you get to the point where you are so confronted with the problem and the pain that it brings is when people are going to make this choice, right? Like, I feel that you and I, we're lucky that we're wired in a certain way, apparently, that we see this before everyone else. I think it's so fun because it sounds so much like a snake oil salesman, right? But anyway, I don't really care. And Larry and James reminded me, and hopefully also my audience, that the underlying thesis is still true and it's accelerating, right? Like, fiat monetary debasement is mathematically assured. There is only one result, like one one point at the end of the road, which is fiat money collapse. Well, Larry says, well, maybe if the governments become, will have financial austerity, etc., they can still fix it. But over time, on a long enough time frame, maybe in our life, maybe probably in our children's lives, this will blow up, and you need something that is outside of that, right?
Yes.
Stuff that government can't create more of. So that is gold, that is Bitcoin, land to a certain degree, and that's probably it, right? And so I think what we are doing in Bitcoin is already preparing ourselves for that inevitable ending, where not a lot of people are of what not a lot of people are aware, and that's why we are weird, and that's why we are crazy, I think. And seeing the price go, up and down within like smaller time frames, but definitely up over a longer time frame, right? Like 3-4+ years, is a signal that shows us that we're at least directionally right. But this is not an easy thing. Like, this is a war. It's like a huge battle for the control of the money. The people that control the money basically control our mind, our spirit, our freedom to act, our freedom to save, to prepare for the future, all these things. And so this is just hard to understand, and it takes time. And so the weirder it gets, the more distracted people are, the less time and attention they can put towards understanding why a global, decentralized, digital monetary asset is a solution to all the different things that they would see are the current problems in the world, by the bad corporations, or the corrupt politicians, or the profit-driven companies, etc., etc. But also just their personal problem, like not being able to find or build a home or build a family or buy groceries or whatever. And yeah, again, I just think it is eventually very simple, right? You just adopt another money that no one can control, that everyone who adopts this money is actually working towards making this money stronger, right? You go from zero-sum game to cooperative competitiveness, and you take the energy away from the system that is basically abusing you, right? That is very simple, but it's totally not easy to understand. And I think, like, these two things existing together, the fact that you need time and space to kind of think through this and reflect and come to terms with the fact that you're probably unknowingly unaware of whatever money is, like we both had before. I mean, you're a TradFi veteran, right? Doing all these things until you found Bitcoin and realizing that you either were living a lie or never really understood it, or whatever your reflection on that is, and just coming to terms with that, like, okay, I was an idiot, I didn't understand, but I was still doing things right. Like, just that part, I had the same. That's already so hard.
I think you're you hit on something there, especially for me, right? Like that when you say we're wired differently, I think the wiring differently is about when faced with something that completely flips the table. When faced with everything I thought before it was wrong, can you be pliable enough to go and change your life? And one of the things that really stood out to me, or I guess kind of framed it for me, was African Bitcoin Corporation, their presentation Did you see that in Amsterdam? Did you get the chance
No,
to see
but I
that?
actually ran into these guys. I would love
Okay.
to talk to them. Yeah.
To talk to them, yeah. And the kind of adoption that's happening in Africa was so exciting to me because it was literally like a large portion of the populace coming to terms with not even coming like so broken, their financial system so broken, is so manipulative, that when they found Bitcoin, they didn't care what the rules were. They didn't care what the regulations were.
Mm-hmm.
They just adopted it and started using it peer to peer with each other to save themselves. And that was so exciting for me, as opposed to the world we live in the West, about, we really want to get this. We got to do it so that we got to comply, and we got to figure out ways
Mm-hmm.
around the regulation. And we know that the European Central Bank is going to hate us for this, but how do we deliver this to the people? And we're kind of trying to navigate this regulatory morass where a population that's broken just said, we don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're going to use this thing, and like they can't hurt us any more than they've hurt us. And
I yeah.
do you think the West needs to get there? Like, just do things
That's a good point.
need to
I
get
think this.
so bad
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
we just say we don't care? Like, do you know
I
what I'm
think
trying to
this is
say?
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's super interesting. I think it's like people act within the paradigm that is presented to them, right? So, I mean, I always think about this when I think about like El Salvador, like people praise Bukele, etc., and there's all these critics and whatever. But I mean, that company was down and out, like at the bottom of the gutter, right? So, I think that why what Bukele is doing is so radical for other people that don't live in a down and out guttered or like country is the fact that they don't live in a down and out guttered country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is very hard to see what is on the other side, or could be, when you are still living in a paradigm or society or country, however you want to call it, where it's still okay enough, right? Like I have, I rent a home, I have water, my baby has food, we have shelter, food, water, electricity. Although the euro lost like 60% of its purchasing power over the last 25 years, I'm still good. Okay. And so if you live in Liberia or the Congo or Lebanon or Mauritania, wherever, and you are rich, but all your money is devalued 100% overnight and you're poor, yeah, that will wake you up, right? Like there is no really like time for contemplation and be like, oh, well, what if this or that or blah, blah. Like, no, you have a fucking problem, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have the problem. And I think in the West, we also have the problem, but it's just later, because by pillaging the entire world in the last few centuries, we have some sort of buffer to kind of extend the life of the fiat money, even use the fiat money to do like economic colonialism and stuff like that. I'm not saying that to gloat, but that's just like we
Right.
are lucky that we are born here. Like it's so random, right? But I think what people need to understand is that the fiat money system is the same everywhere in the world. You're just lucky that the currency that you are forced to use is stronger than mine, right? Like in our case, your dollar is stronger than my euro, or at least they're kind of battling. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I want to look it up now because I want to be correct. Like how many countries use the US dollar as their currency, right?
Right.
11, 11,
Yeah. And even if they
11.
don't use it as their currency, they're pegging it, or they're trading it against the US dollar in order to
Like
achieve
it
some
is
sort
their
of
national
financial goals.
currency. It is their
Yeah.
national currency,
Right.
right? I'm trying to look up how many. I don't know which countries there, but how crazy is that? So there's
Yeah.
11 countries where people exchange value all the time with each other, and they use a reward in that value exchange that's printed by magic by people that don't give a fuck about them.
Right. That or
Wild.
could be completely trying to take advantage of their resources and other things within their country.
That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
France is doing in
Yeah.
it's the Central African franc created by
Mm-hmm.
France that I want to look it up now because I want to be correct. Central African franc countries. Six: Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. They use the Central African franc, which is printed by France, who doesn't use it themselves, right?
Right.
But
I
they
mean,
buy natural resources from these countries using that money.
it's literally the story in the Bitcoin standard that Safety wrote about, where they showed up with beads because they could make beads, and they just completely
Yeah.
devalued the bead as currency in Africa, and then just took it over. It's the same idea, just hidden behind Bank of International Settlements and central banks around the world, and these authority figures, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
I
at the
think
same,
getting here, sorry,
oh,
to
it's okay.
add
Go ahead.
to getting here in a Western country is hard because it just works. It
Mm-hmm.
just works. When
Yeah.
you were a kid, you got some coins and a bill, and you went to a store and you gave that, and you got a bread or a lollipop or whatever. And that was your introduction with money. Like,
Yeah.
oh, apparently this is money. And then basically you never questioned it again.
One of the things that, okay, so this was my first time to Northern Europe. I've been to Italy, Austria, but I'd never been into Northern Europe. And one of the things that stood out to me compared to the West is how just nice everybody is. Like in the US, people are not that nice. Like they have no problem telling you to go F yourself, right? Very quickly, over the smallest things. And so do you think, what is it about European culture? Is being nice a part of the culture? And do you think that has an impact on adoption?
Yeah, fun question. I think of the European, I'm looking up the World Happiness Report. It's Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, Netherlands. So I live in country
Yeah.
number 5. Then it's Costa Rica. That's a
Okay.
tropical
Yeah.
US. Norway, Israel, Luxembourg, Mexico, Australia, and so. I mean, um, it's funny actually that Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, like cold ass countries,
Yes. With
are
no sunlight.
Sweden. That's the top 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are the happiest. Well, these are also quite rich countries, right? I don't know. I mean, like Dutch culture is very direct, right? Sometimes I think even more direct than the US. It's funny because my
Okay.
experience in the US, for example, I think last time when I was on a plane, someone fainted, and like 30 people stand up and help this person. And for me, that is also that is in American culture to some degree. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we do this together. There's like this community thing, right? And like
Yeah.
one person helped this person with some water on their face, another person said, oh, I'm a doctor, I can check, or whatever. Like, and when I watched that, I was thinking, okay, this is my idea of a certain community part in American culture, which, to be honest, I think is less in my country.
Mm.
Uh, but the entirety of America, especially in the whole financial structure, is geared towards, well, what they call or like capitalism, but it's actually consumerism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is consumerism, but they say the word capitalism, and credit, debt, etc. It's just engineered from that start. So I do think there is a certain anxiety within the American financial system that is embedded, right? Like things like, oh, is my credit score enough, and stuff like that, just how that works. And I think in Europe that's a bit different. So for me, that would be kind of like the core difference. Yeah, are people happier? Or, well, apparently they're happier. But I don't think that actually helps with adoption, right?
Uh-huh.
Because if you're
Yeah.
happy and you have shelter and water and food and power, then yeah, if someone comes along on a random podcast and says your money is fucked and you need to get other money, that's not really a good pitch, right? Because these people are happy. They don't see they have a problem. And so again, I think that's why it's hard to see, because when I talk to Larry and James, it's like, you need to understand the underlying structural foundation and workings of fiat money. It can only exist if more debt is created. That means all the existing money units are constantly devalued, which incentivizes you, which is a good thing. Some economists say to spend, but that actually creates all the problems that people see, I think, in many societies today. So, poor quality of products, poor like cultural, societal habits and stuff like that. There's just a breakdown of quality if whatever you measure the quality in is breaking down in value itself, right? And so that, I think, is very logical and rational. Like, you can understand that, but then applying that within your own context, I think, is what people find the hardest. Because if my context is, I have shelter, food, power,
Right.
water, then, well, it's still working for me.
Yeah.
So there isn't really
Maybe
this
it's the
urge.
consumerism in the US of the keeping up with the Joneses that keep us sort of like looking at least for the next number go up thing, right? Which would lead you to adopt Bitcoin quicker. But I wanted to ask you this, because this happened when we were in Amsterdam. The Czech National Bank, right? They bought $1 million, a small transaction for them, but I believe this is the first central bank to publicly buy Bitcoin. I know that the ECB was not for this, and I know they had much bigger goals. I think they wanted to buy like 5% of their national reserves. They wanted to put in Bitcoin, and maybe they're still heading in that direction. I'm not totally sure. And they actually isolated this holding into a separate. They don't have it in their international reserves, so they're kind of categorized as a test transaction. Do you have any like thoughts on this, or how
Yeah,
this affects the EU at all?
I thought that was really smart, actually. Right. So this guy who, like the governor director of the bank, I'm looking up his name. I'm looking at a Reuters article. I don't know his name, but like it's the director of the central bank, right? Oh, Governor Alice Mickle. He floated the idea of looking at Bitcoin in January, and said new ways of making payments and investments were emerging, and he wanted to be ready, right? And it was interesting because after that, Lagarde, president of the ECB, said they wouldn't approve, right? Like, she believed Bitcoin would never become a reserve asset for EU members, and there are, of course, some like policy agreements and stuff like that with between the European Central Bank and like the national central bank. So I think it was actually very smart that he buys the Bitcoin outside of their official reserves. I'm just reading because this is compliant with Czech and European legislation, right? So he found this loophole to do it. And I don't think the 1 million really matters. I think it's more about that he did it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just very interesting. I think when I heard this guy talk about Bitcoin, like, he gets it, right? He really gets it. And that's also something that's interesting. I had a podcast with Dennis Diukarev, who's a Swedish parliament member of like I think it's the second largest party. And he proposed for Sweden to start a Bitcoin reserve, and like he's trying to get our support for that. And so he's talking to the Swedish central bank, etc. And he had a presentation there at the Swedish central bank, and he was explaining like, oh, there's countries like Bhutan, etc. Now Luxembourg, who are buying Bitcoin, and he was explaining that, and there were people that replied like, oh, there are other countries that are buying Bitcoin. We've never heard of that. And he was like, what? How is that possible, right? And this is something that I think about a lot. Like, how can I, as a random pleb, have figured this out, right? And the people whose job it is to actually understand why they should have gold, what is the meaning of having gold, right? Like, and what is this Bitcoin thing? How do the characteristics compare? How should I view, people talk about Bitcoin being digital gold. Is that exactly what it is, or is that just an illustration? Is it more, right? Like, in my mind, people like this should constantly be figuring out, right? They are fund managers, they're basically, right? Or they're creating certain type of security for their country, for the long-term prosperity of their country, right? This is the only thing you need to think about every day, in my opinion, right? Well, the European Central Bank is thinking about how they are going to help with climate change, which is random, totally outside of their mandate, right? Like, this is what they like, the videos they put out. And I had this conversation with Dennis, and he was like the same, right? I'm just so amazed and also a bit scared by the fact that these people seemingly don't really know what they're doing, right? Like, why is everyone buying gold? Well, yeah, because everyone is buying gold or something, right? In the Netherlands, they moved all the gold that is in the Netherlands, by the way. I think maybe half or a large percentage is actually in New York, which also begs the question, like, do you really own it? But that's another discussion, right? So the gold that
it's
was
like they
in
haven't read
Amsterdam.
history,
Yeah, it's like but it's just a little sidestep. This is also why I think it's hard. You need to think through Bitcoin also conceptually, right? Like, just like you said, like, if America says, all this gold is ours, and the Netherlands is like, well, but we have a 250-year relationship, whatever, and America just says, yeah, I don't really care, then what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do, right? And the fact that that option exists, that possibility is there, right, for that scenario, tells you something about gold and how you should store it and how you should audit it and stuff like that, right? And again, this is also something that I don't understand. Like, you store your gold, which cannot really, yeah, maybe in a nuclear attack it will melt or whatever, but if it's deep underground, like, it cannot perish and whatnot. So why is it even in New York? Do these people even understand why it's in New York? I don't know. But in the Netherlands, we moved all the gold that was stored in Amsterdam to, like, this old air base of the army, and they built, like, this new vault and this new location or whatever. This was like 4 years ago or something. And of course, the people involved having interviews on the national news and being like, yeah, we have a storage of gold here because, well, if everything goes wrong with our financial system, we at least have something to restart again, right? Like, this is why central banks have gold. I think this is the general story. But then in my mind, it goes like, okay, so if you already have a fallback, which costs a lot of money to actually acquire, maintain, and secure all these things, like, what is the probability of you needing this fallback, right? Like, if you understood if the current system would work or not, like, you would act based on that understanding. Does this make sense? Like, if they already are hedging actively, right? Now China is buying more gold, and all these things. Like, why don't you talk about the flaws of the current system that make you hedge against it already, and saying things like, well, if it all goes to shit, at least we'll have the gold, right? Like, in my mind, that just doesn't really compute. And then even if there would be a legitimate reason, why is it gold? Do you understand why it's gold? Like, I don't know. I think this is just interesting to think about, because then if they start argumenting around gold, well, it's because everyone has it. Well, that's a dumb argument. that would be a dumb argument, in my opinion. Okay, so the characteristics of gold are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, if anything better comes along, objectively superior to this, should you make the decision to actually get that? Because that would be a better hedge against the total, destruction, implosion of the current financial system, right? So it's just very unclear to me why these decisions are made, and whether or not the people that are making the decisions are actually aware of what it entails, what it means.
I think you're right. I don't think they are aware. I think the system at large tends to support and promote people that comply with the system. And therefore, so we see this all the time with like these US economists that have this long-standing track record of working within the system, and the way they talk about Bitcoin, the way they talk about gold, is just supporting the system. It's not. They would never say something like what the prime minister, I forget his title in Sweden, said. They would never admit that this is something we need because the system is collapsing, because fiat will inevitably debase to the point where if we don't have gold, we're going to be completely screwed. So the fact that they are willing to support the system just drives them higher up in the stack and gives them more authority, gives them more relevance, and supports them individually. And that anytime you see any of these individuals, Bukele is a great example, start to say things about what is good for the people or what is good for their country and what is good for their future sovereignty, they're you can see them. They start to peel those people out. They just like, you can't be a part of the system. Like you're no longer in complying with the goals of the state.
Yeah. So I don't want to interrupt you, but this is so funny. If a random guy who is elected in a down and out fucked up country is doing it different, and that already is a signal for the people that, shouldn't care anything at all about this little shitty country, are actually actively saying, oh no, this guy is dangerous, this guy is a dictator, all this like simple stupid arguments. That is the signal. That is the signal. And also, same goes for like ECB press conferences, right? Or ECB researchers, or Christine Lagarde saying, oh no, Bitcoin is shitty. Bitcoin is nothing. It's just a random internet thing for criminals or whatever. Like, why are you talking about it? Why are you spending time and energy to talk? Does it actually matter? Do you know how many ideas are released on the internet every day? Fucking billions. Okay. This was one idea that was released on the internet 16 years ago, and you still talk about it. Yep. Why?
100%. That is the signal.
And yes, exactly. And so that is a signal by itself. And it's just to go back to, why is this hard to understand, is because you as the individual in this paradigm, especially in a country where stuff works, you're looking up to the people that are arranging that for you, or rather who you've outsourced the arranging to, so you don't really have to think about it, right? So if they say, oh, Bitcoin bad, Bitcoin criminal, whatever, you're like, oh yeah, that is true because my security, this and that, right? But there's just very clear like layer, it's not even that deep, where you can kind of see that they just have no fucking clue, right? This viral clip of this guy from a central bank, or the guy who was like the economic advisor to Biden.
Yes,
that they asked how is money created, and then he starts talking, and then he's like, I don't even know, dude. What? And actually yesterday Lawrence mentioned Stephanie Kelton. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
So she's like this economist and whatever, and she's a proponent of MMT, right? Like, I learned about this maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago, that there are people that support this thing called MMT, modern monetary theory, right? And this is kind of attached to something that Bukele said, but there's this general meme, right? Like, why do you pay taxes to your government when the government can just create money out of nothing, right? Fascinating question.
Yep.
Fascinating question. And just, there's only one answer, right? Because you don't think about it and you're being coerced and everything. Like, that's the answer.
You'll go to jail, or you'll
like,
lose all your whatever you work for. Yep.
I just looked up the Wikipedia page, whether or not that's factual, that's also a different discussion, right? But it says, modern monetary theory frames government spending and taxation differently to most orthodox frameworks. MMT states that the government is the monopoly issuer of its currency and therefore must spend currency into existence before any tax revenue can be collected. The government spends currency into existence and taxpayers use that currency to pay their obligations to the state. This means that taxes cannot fund public spending in a nominal monetary flow sense, as the government cannot collect money back in taxes until after it has been issued into the economy. In this kind of monetary system, the government is never constrained in its ability to pay. Rather, the limits are the real resources available for purchase in the state's currency. MMT argues that the primary risk once the economy reaches full employment is demand pull inflation, which acts as the only constraint on spending. MMT also argues that inflation pressures can be mitigated by increasing taxes on everyone to reduce the spending capacity of the private sector, releasing real resources such that the state can employ them at the current price in non-inflationary way. You know what's so fucking wild about this? Like, it is a fancy text, but it just glosses over everything, right? So, okay, so the government, my point here is that at the beginning of this article, it says, there are known economists like Stephanie Kelton, Warren Mosler, Bill Mitchell, whatever, right? Like, there are PhD educated economist people that support this. And when I read this, it's like, okay, so there's an infinite amount of money units that the government can create. They're just going to put that into the economy. So there's always money for people to work for. And then when they receive that money, they give parts of these units back to the government that created them before for I don't know what the purpose is, because they can just create the money, right? The unit. So it's basically for control or creating a certain structure. So the people like act in a certain way. But in my mind, these two things together actually do not incentivize people to create value, right? If the reward you are receiving today is at least conceptually possibly being debased forever, infinitely, why would you keep on delivering value? Then next to that, even if you deliver value, you get a reward, then you pay, you are forced by force, right? If you don't buy it, eventually there's a man with a gun at the door. Mm-hmm. Or there's jail, whatever. You are forced to give units back to the institution that created them in the first place, right? And so I don't know, like, this is a fantasy world. It's so weird. And then when you see her talk, she's like, there is no deficit. A deficit doesn't exist. So they only think about like nominal terms. It's like, I have 100,000 in debt. Oh, well, I print 100,000. Now the debt is gone, right? Like, it is almost childish, right? There's no philosophical exploration of what the money, the reward in a value exchange, what that actually should represent, right? They're just moving numbers. They're just talking about it in a one-dimensional way.
I was trying to describe when I said, like, the economists that are part of the system, because there are very, very smart people in government that understand the position we are in with the rate of change in the growth of debt, right? When people say stuff like, oh, there's always been a lot of debt, it's just not a big deal. What they're missing is it's the rate of change of debt relative to the much slower rate of change in economic growth. And therefore, you fall into this fiscal dominance environment that we find ourselves in the West, where the debt is you can no longer pay for the debt. The interest consumes all taxation, right? So look what comes along. What comes along are well-renowned economists that explain a new system, that, oh, the way we thought about things in the past was actually incorrect. It's a very convenient new theory that says to the general public, don't worry about it. We actually had it wrong. Now we figured it out. And if you're the economist supporting this new message, and God only knows where the motivation came to create this new message. I think it probably came from the state that knows they needed a new message to be applied to economic theory. Then now you can justify everything you're doing, right? Printing money to acquire Argentina's resources, printing money to make the world safe from COVID, printing money to rebuild the energy sector so that we can dominate AI, right? What we're seeing here is we need an excuse that gives us cover to create unlimited amounts of money to acquire the resources to keep the state in power.
Yeah.
and tell the people we got it all figured out.
Yeah.
So these are economists that should know better, probably do know better, but they will play with what the system, they will create theories that the system requires because it elevates them individually.
Well, that's their incentive, yeah,
Yeah.
because this is not rocket science.
No,
It is
it's
not rocket
yeah.
science. I love how Lynn Alden has this like illustration of a scale, right? And you have the amount of money and the amount of goods and services you can buy with them, right? If more money units are created, this part gets heavier and the prices go up. If more money creation is the underpinning of the financial system that you're pursuing, then prices will go up forever. That is just it. And like you said, if you are forced to find narratives and find excuses to create these triggers or moments in time where you're going to print like crazy, again, I think this is how it works in my mind. That is a signal. Like, they cannot be transparent by definition. They have to
100%.
create a sauce, a narrative around it, right?
100%.
And yeah, again, that is the signal. And what I love about Bitcoin is that it's totally opposite of that. Bitcoin is forced transparency. If you say I have one Bitcoin and you say show me, and I say show me, and you say no, I say fuck you, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
Right. Like it is forced transparency. It's yeah. I always say like walk your talk. Right. Like fiat is just talk. And talk is cheap, especially if you can create the money just by by doing nothing, right? By printing a button. Also fascinating, right? Elon Musk shared that he found like 7 computers where money is created.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so
off balance sheet, essentially.
Yeah. So the point here is that, if the bigger topic we're talking about is how to view and understand Bitcoin, it's just, you don't need a lot of information. You just need to understand that there are certain things that are shown to you straight to your face that show you the fiat money system is fundamentally flawed. It's fundamentally flawed, and it can only survive when more money is created, right?
Right.
And I also, maybe one more thing. When Jeff Booth talks about, technological advancement is innovation is inherently deflationary. That is just factually true. Like over time, stuff became more cheap. Well, this is a fucking expensive phone nowadays, right? But there's more computing power, maybe 100,000 more times more computing power in this thing than like the first computer that like the container that went on a plane. That picture like of this first computer. And then when you hear economists talk like no, deflation is bad, but they never finish the sentence, right? It's deflation is bad in a debt-based monetary system. They never finish the sentence, because if they would finish the sentence, they would give you a new clue showing you that this is a financial system of perpetual debt. And if that is the fundamental characteristic of this money system, and you are not playing that game, people are playing the game with you. And even when you are playing the game, like in America, right? Like you can only get a credit score if you go into debt. Like, dude, for a European mind, that is not incomprehensible. It's so stupid. It makes no sense. But people still do it because that is the game.
That is the game.
But it's a game that other people propose to you and push you towards, with the whole narratives around it. And with Bitcoin, again, totally opposite. It's not, don't trust me, don't trust Paul, fucking figure it out for yourself. You can make a voluntary decision whether or not you want to join the fiat or like the Bitcoin money system. And you can do that totally by yourself. You can verify everything by yourself. And that's the entire point, because then when you do adopt it, you are actually incentivized to contribute to it and to follow the rules, right? In Bitcoin is rules versus the rulers of the fiat money system. And again, that's just totally opposite of each other.
Yeah, 100%.
And again, I think once you see that, you have to think about what you think of it. Am I okay that other people know smarter than me, know better than me, are actually influencing the value of the money I'm forced to use to receive in a value exchange in my country? Yes or no? And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But then you also need to be okay with the assured result of infinite dilution and debasement of your purchasing power. And
I think people adopt this system or get incentivized to take on a lot of debt. And there's tax incentives to do that. There are all sorts of reasons in the United States to take on debt that will benefit you in the current system. But I think what they don't tell you, and you will only learn this by looking at and studying financial history, is that amount of leverage is what the state will use against you to consolidate power and control. Look at 2008, the Great Depression. It was all the public debt getting pinned against a central bank allowing deflation, which then bankrupted so many people that they beg for a solution. And that's the old story, right? The arsonist and the firefighter that build these situations or set up these situations where people beg for a solution. And it's an easy trap to fall into because there's so many incentives to just take on enormous amounts of debt, especially here in the United States. And so I wonder, and I would actually love to talk to Larry about this because I understand the big print concept. I wonder how, do we get to a point in the future where we get this big print, all assets up, Bitcoin, gold, everything's up. People are leveraged to the hilt. They're buying real estate. They're getting mortgages. It's just the race, right? Very similar to what we saw running into 1929, which is just expansive leverage in the system and all asset prices. Everybody FOMOs in. After the big print, once the public is laden with debt, do central banks, in order to control the system, consolidate the system, do they withdraw the capital? Do they withdraw the money? Do they get all of a sudden fiscally conservative and crush the public? Right. And so I think about this is like, I think people need to think further ahead. Mm-hmm. I think the big print is inevitable. I think that'll come, but you have to also be thinking, why would they want to do that? Well, and then how will they use that against you, right? And maybe that's just my doomer outlook, but
well, either way, as a general pleb, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what Larry said yesterday, he thinks there's basically two prints. Like the big print comes, like the bigger print comes after the big print. It's also maybe one step back. I want to check with you, but in my mind, it's like, why are people leveraged is because they understand that over time, if the money is being debased and loses its value, you only have to pay it back nominally, right? So if that's this whole idea of this 50-year mortgage, right?
Yep.
It's hard to calculate, but conceptually, it's not really a bad idea. But eventually, you will probably pay
so it's
too much over time.
It's playing Monopoly, and then all of a sudden, the rules of the game change.
Yeah.
So and that is the problem, right? And this is the beauty of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has a fixed set of rules. The protocol will not change, and therefore you can do long-term planning on how to attain wealth. Whereas if you're playing in their financial system, the rules are saying leverage, because debt will be devalued. The printing of fiat will always devalue debt, and assets will go up, and you'll get rich.
You need to.
But if every 100 years they change the rules of the game, and you're not the bank, you're not sitting there going, "Oh, the rules are changed." Hey guys, we're changing the rules now. We're gonna go this direction, but don't tell all the other players on the board, right? If they change the rules like they've done in the past, and they've done this in lots of other, this has happened in the United States a couple times. It's happened in other empires. When those rules get changed, that's when everybody gets wrecked. And then, to
Yes,
me, that's
but
on purpose.
it's even today. I'm looking up. Do you know the here? Do you know the Austrian 100-year bond?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, so there's an Austrian 100-year bond. I'm trying to look it up, like where it started and where it's going. But this is a 100-year bond that. Oh, I don't know what's happening with my Riverside. I'm back, I think.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, I cannot find it quickly, but I think it already like lost 50% of its value or whatever.
Sure.
So people buy like a 100-year bond with a 2.15% yield.
Uh-huh.
And it already lost its value, right? So you're stuck.
Yep.
You're stuck. Your capital is stuck, and Austria is like, okay, chill, thank you. Like this, and this is, I think, harder to understand. It took me, I think, multiple times listening to James Lavish, actually, who talks just about nominal returns versus real rate of return. And that's like what you said. You have to zoom out. You have to understand, okay, I can pay it back nominally, or I get paid back nominally. But if the units that I get paid back lose value over time, what am I actually getting? What does that represent?
You're getting a
because
negative real return.
Yeah, because eventually with money you want to buy these products and services that are out there in the world, right? And again, also, if more money units are constantly created, where and thus being devalued per unit, where does the incentive come from for the people creating the products and services to create more or better products and services? Does that make sense? Like, there is no incentive, or at least the incentive goes lower and lower to actually innovate and make things better, etc. Because why would I invest X amount of dollar units for research and development of, whatever product or innovation or whatever I want to achieve, if over time that money loses value anyway? I cannot even plan for the future, right? Like, I cannot even plan for a 10-year project. Impossible.
Yep.
Well, you can do it nominally, but in year 4 or 5, probably already you will run into your future budgeting issues, right?
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that I feel so staggering. It's so blatantly in your face. And then when you just use your eyes and look at historical old buildings and then figure out, like, okay, I have this example I use a lot. Like a few months ago, I was in Antwerp, standing in front of like their first central bank or something. And that building was from 1572 or 76. And I was just thinking, like, what has been built in my lifetime, my 30 plus years, that is going to live on for 500 plus years?
Yeah, right.
Are people even incentivized to start building on something that maybe takes 30 years to finish or whatever? Like, does that even exist anymore? Because there are people that worked on this building 500 years ago that probably didn't even see it finished within their lifetime.
That's right. 100%. And that's what people miss about hard money. Hard money projects wealth into the future, right? Yeah. And so that you can say, I can spend today because it's going to build something of value that will persist for a long period of time. The money that generates, that business, that the money that it generates, if it's generating value in hard money, that money will be providing you better purchasing power in the future. So in that real simple economic model of working with a hard money, the money that you're earning today purchases you more in the future, right? Jeff Booth talks about this in a way with deflation as being a benefit to humanity, because things should theoretically get cheaper. They could be getting cheaper because your productivity is increasing. They can also be getting cheaper because your money is increasing in purchasing power. That creates a tremendous amount of abundance for people. And every time over the last, say, I don't know, 50 years or so, every time we have these kind of advancements that should create prosperity for individuals. You should be able to get more compute on your phone. You're getting maps for free. You're getting unlimited pictures and storage for life, right? Like, it just unbelievable. You should get more and more fuel efficient cars, but inflation just pulls that away. The increasing of the debt, the printing of the money just pulls that away. So every time we as humans go out and create value, all the central banks have to do is print the money to pull that away from us.
Yes.
And so that's why I think we, and especially millennials, right? Because millennials are faced with this, and like literally just their generation was just smacked in the face with this, that no matter how hard I work, right? Millennials, probably the most college educated, smartest generation, the most productive generation in regards to the use of technology. Like, they have all the tools, and the government constantly extracts value away from them, so that they're stuck on the hamster wheel. Mm-hmm. So I guess that leads me to kind of an ending kind of thought maybe we can discuss here, because I know you've got about 10 more minutes. How are you communicating that to millennials today, and what is the reception? Do you feel like you're making progress with that generation? Or is the generation itself splitting into haves and have-nots? How do you see that playing out?
Maybe before I answer that, because you made me think of something. It's this hard money, right? So if we use hard money as rewards in the value exchanges for the products and services people create, and like you said, this reward actually increases in purchasing power over time. I am motivated today to make, and if everyone knows that, right, that this money is increasing in purchasing power over time, I am by definition incentivized to today create the best value possible, so I can persuade someone, not by talking, but by creating value, to part ways with their hard money, right? The benefit for them of having my product or service today outweighs them keeping this money that accrues in purchasing power, right? So me, as the creator of the products and services, I am forced to understand what people need. I am forced to create the highest quality product or service that I could create. And I'm also forced to innovate in order to create this thing. Does that make sense? Especially with AI, right? Like AI coming in, productivity is democratized all over the world instantly, right? So so it's democratized. So if I'm incentivized, if the people that are the entrepreneurs, if the people that are creating the products and services are incentivized today to create the highest value possible today to receive a reward that accrues in purchasing power over time, that creates this kind of like positive feedback loop where innovation will actually be judged, I want to say, more fair or more harsh, right? Like true capitalism, in my opinion, is like, okay, we both try to make the same product. Mine sucks, yours better. Okay, we go with Paul's. That's just how it goes. But that's fine for me as the guy who fails, because if my capital is in money that accrues in purchasing power over time, I actually have time and space to fail. So I also have time and space to try a lot of stuff, right? And so I think that collectively raises the general motivation of innovating. And I think that is what accelerates us eventually to this point of abundance, as Jeff Booth talks about. Because at some point, we're at the end of all invention. Right? The robots are doing everything for us. We can enjoy the sun and life and this miracle, the temporary dream, all these things. We can get there. But, and again, this is from Lynn Alden, right? If the force of progressing technology is deflationary, right? It becomes more accessible, becomes cheaper to create, etc., and eventually abundant and free. If you price that in a money that is inflationary, right, of which you constantly need more of to buy the same things, that is the battle that is going on, right? And one of the insights that I had is like looking at these future predictions from people that lived in like 1910. That's where like we're going to have flying cars in the 2000s came from. So within their paradigm, within that hard money standard that they lived in, that was their idea of the future. This is where we could go as humans, right? If they were asked like 100 years in the future, what does it look like? Flying cars. They said flying cars, dude. And we're not there. We're not there. Okay. And my simple example of that is, okay, if you, and this is what I say to people, so to connect to your question, right? Like, I think pitching Bitcoin, bad idea, right? People need to understand the financial world they live in now, how that's not working for them, etc. But I usually start with, okay, would you agree that over time, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever, we as humans get better at technology? We improve, we innovate, etc. So we get better at everything because the technology is doing that for us. Like, do you agree with that? It's usually my starting question. Well, most people say yes, right? Because especially the millennials, they know like the first flip phones, and now we have this, right? So it's like in your face, in your hand. You know that this has happened. Same as like cassette, CDs, mini discs, Spotify, etc. Right? Like, we've seen that progression. Okay, so a lot of people agree with that. And then I say like, okay, let's have a simple example. Do you think that in the past 50 or maybe even 100 years, we became better at making bread? Like, just understanding what is the perfect bread, making bread machines, bread robots, super big bread factories, whatever. Like, would you agree that we became better because of the technological advancement at making bread? And everyone is like, yeah, sure. I say, okay. Why is it then a joke? We say, haha, like in the 60s or 50s, the bread was like 20 cents or 15 cents in whatever currency actually. But today it's 3, 4, 5 full units, right? Like $3, 4, $5 or euros for a bread. Why do you need more units of the same currency for a product that you agreed with is probably made in a more efficient way due to technological advancement, right? Shouldn't it be cheaper? Why is bread not free, right? It's then what I say. Mm-hmm. And that's when kind of like the gears are going, right? And then I add, okay, do you think that a bread in like 1910 or 1960 was nutritionally better than the bread today? Everyone agrees with that, right? That the bread sucks today.
Yeah.
And that like the artisan bread, right? Like, in America, you have $30 breads, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. Yep. So that exists. And so this is kind of where I start, because I want to create this opening for people to think about, okay, what does money actually represent? Why is money that we have now different from money of 60 years ago, right? Like, fiat money is a 50-ish year old experiment. This is not how we didn't organically end up with, this is the best solution for money, right? And now we're getting close to more like the red pillish moment. Is like, okay, what happened to the money? Well, there were a few centrally organized people that thought it would be a great idea to not peg money to something that is actually scarce in nature, but just be able to create it by the press of a button without any energy being expended for it, to then eventually represent energy in value exchanges. And that's kind of how I try to like go there.
That is really good.
The point is, does that make you uncomfortable or not?
Right.
If it doesn't make you uncomfortable, if you just feel like, oh yeah, well, I could never do anything about it, I'm going to be a sad nihilistic pleb and NPC, whatever. If that is your thing, that's fine, right? Like, there is no value in continuing that conversation. But if people are becoming a little bit like insecure, or like, okay, well, that's kind of weird, can you explain more to me? Like, that only then we can like further unpack and eventually end up, I would say, with why Bitcoin is a superior money. Like, if you don't understand the problem that you have, that is obviously very futile, right? And why I say it's a red pill, it's what we talked about in the beginning of the conversation. It's like, okay, this is now my new view on money, and I'm realizing that everything I thought before, I just had no clue. I just followed what other people said. I didn't really think about it. I just used it. I did things in a financial system, got a mortgage, blah, 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 got a credit score, got into debt and all that. I did all these things and I had no clue. And that, I think, is the harshest point the first harsh point that people need to get over is like, okay, that's not nice to realize. It's pretty fucked up. I'm an idiot. This is how I felt, by the way. Okay, what am I going to do about it? Like, can I actually do anything about it, right? And I think from there, this research that you have to do kind of progresses. And so, am I making a dent? I don't know. I think so, a little bit at least. I'm trying. But I think with millennials, so on one side, it is very clear for them, with regards to technological advancements, the internet, physical, digital assets, things, etc. It should be very clear. On the other side, especially in Western country, money just worked. Like, I never had to think about it. Like, are you going to tell me that I have no clue about money and I have no clue what the F I'm doing? Yeah, but it's not weird or stupid that people don't see it, because it's always worked for them.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of where the challenge is like, okay, I can conceptually explain, but can you actually internally come to the agreement that while you are agreeing with my explanation, you also feel very uncomfortable about the fact that you really never ever thought about it? And I think that is harder than actually accepting the factual explanation of how money works. And so I mean, I'm attempting to tell that to other people. So I think more people should try to do that, because eventually this is I think a huge battle. It's a huge battle. I think it's a very spiritual thing, like you touched upon earlier. Like, if my time and energy is devalued by other people that don't care about me, they care more about their own lives, like I care more about my own life than you care about your life. Why do I let other people do that? What does that mean for my spirit and for my view towards the future and anxiety towards the future, all these things? And so I do think it's also a very spiritual thing. Yeah.
Bram, that was very well said, and I think I'm going to use that as a tool. I love that explanation. I spend a lot of time orange pilling people the wrong way. I tend to be like a hammer.
And me too. Don't worry. Yeah.
So I think this is a great place to end our conversation, because you did a great job explaining it. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And people, if you don't already know who Bram is, check out Bitcoin for Millennials. His podcast is amazing. And like and subscribe to Byte Federal's podcast so that we can share more great individuals like Bram. And thank you for joining us today. Thanks, Bram.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you. Appreciate it.